Welcome to a quick walk through the TIPS 2 problem-solving model using behavior data. We begin with first identifying our problem with precision. What is the problem? Who is displaying these undesired behaviors? When is it happening? Where is it occurring? And why? Once these elements are in place, we identify the goal for success. At that point, we can then use those precision elements and goal to align solutions to bring about the desired change. We then gather two sources of data: fidelity data, so that we can say that the solutions were put in place, and also outcome data, so that we can monitor the impact of the solution against the goal. In other words, has the problem been solved? Using all these data, we then determine our next steps, which may include recycling through the problem-solving process. Let's take a closer look at the first step. We start out by taking a big picture look at our data to answer the question of, is there a problem? We often start out with more primary statements, such as this: office discipline referrals for third graders are above national median for schools our size. This is a good first step. However, it doesn't give us very much direction as to the solutions to put in place. We need to define it with more precise elements. Now take a look at this one. Referrals for physical aggression among third grade students from 11:30 to 12:30 in the cafeteria are increasing over time. It's believed that this is happening due to a lack of consistent teaching of cafeteria procedures. This is a precise problem statement. It has our elements, our 5 elements. We now feel like we have more clarity on what solutions we may want to put in place. Let's practice a little bit. Here's a graph from Swiss. It's the average referrals per day per month. This is our big picture look at a school. Our first question is there a problem? To answer that question, we have to compare current levels, what we see, with our desired levels, which in Swiss we usually use as the median score, or the 50th percentile. When we look at this graph now, with that in mind, we can see that our referrals are quite a bit above our expectation, with a trend increasing and all of our months above the national median except for the month of June. So is there a problem? In most cases, I think we would agree there was. Here's one way we can describe that. This, however, is a primary statement. It does not lead us toward the direction of solutions. We need to make it more precise. We have a problem. Now what? We want clarity to give us direction. With our TIPS 2 model, we define our problem statements with precision by making sure that we have 5 elements. What is the behavior in observable, measurable terms? When it is occurring? Where it is occurring? Who is involved or who is displaying the behaviors? And why are the behaviors being maintained? Let's look at some of these statements from moving from a primary statement to a more precise statement. Gang-like behavior is increasing. This is a primary statement. We don't have a lot of direction on how to implement the most suitable solutions. However, if we refine it, this gives us more direction on what solutions might be most appropriate. We now have it defined as verbal and physical aggression. It's happening on the playground. It's occurring during first recess, with primarily involving 4 fourth grade boys, and it's being maintained by social praise from the bystander peer group. Let's take another example. The buses are awful. Again, we don't have any good direction on solutions. However, when we refine this, we now have a better idea of the behaviors that are occurring, when they're occurring, and what's maintaining those behaviors. Take a look at this. Do you think this is a precise or a primary statement? Think about your 5 elements. Does it have a what, a when, a where, a who, and a why? If you can check off all those 5, then we have a precise statement. Let's take a look at another one. Again, think of your 5 elements and check them off. I think as you've read through this, you realize that you really couldn't check off very many elements. This one is a primary statement. Despite its wordiness, it doesn't have all the elements that we would need to be able to move on to a solution. But the boys in 3rd grade are having behavior problems. We have a who, and we have a very vague what, because we really don't know in observable and measurable terms. So really we only have one of our 5 elements, which makes this one a primary statement. Let's take a look at this one. 5th grade students, there's a who, are loitering in the hallways. This is happening in the morning. They're being tardy during the past month. We believe that they're doing it in order to avoid homework. Does this have 5 elements? You said yes, you're correct. This is a precise statement. It's ready to move on for goal identification and also then for solutions. Let's look through some data. Let's start off with our first graph that we looked at. We have identified that there is a problem, so we need to then drill down into it where we get our specific precision elements. As we walk through these graphs, I want you to keep track of these precision elements so that you can write your own precision statement based on these data. Also, as you're thinking through this, think about how you might obtain these data to answer these questions in any data set you may use. Let's take a look at the what. Again, we're going to be using some Swift's graphs. This is referrals by problem behavior. If we look all the way over to the right-hand side, we see that defiant seems to be the most frequently reported behavior problem. Now we want to look at the where. Where is that happening? We pull up, we drill down into our data, we pull up referrals by location, and we're seeing classroom and playground as being where most of these behaviors are being reported. When we look at the when, we can look across the time of the whole entire school day. There's times where we see it's pretty consistent throughout the day. That's also useful information. However, when we look closely at this one, we really do see peaks right around the time frame from 11:45 to noon. Who is displaying these behaviors? We see primarily the 3rd and 4th graders. When we look at why, we can look at a lot of different avenues for answering that question. One might be our ISIL components, which are factors that reflect instruction, curriculum, environment, and learner. Instruction is the way that we deliver whatever curriculum content. The curriculum is the foundation of what we are, the content of what we are delivering. The environment are all the factors around the students, and then the learner are any of those characteristics of the students over which we have control that we might be able to change because they are barriers for these students to be learning or displaying the appropriate behaviors. We can also look at our functional drivers. We know that people act in ways to be able to gain something or to avoid something. These are critical things that we can look at avenues for defining the why a behavior is being maintained in an environment. We can also look at skill development. Are students just at the level of acquiring skills, such as social skills? Have they gotten to the point where now they are fluent with them and they can actually practice very well? Have they generalized, maybe from within a small group social skills to the actual general ed setting? And can they adapt those skills? We can also pull up data from UnSwiss. Here we look at the different possible motivators. We see from this particular data set, main reason that students seem to be displaying these behaviors were because they're trying to avoid work. So now think about all those precision elements that we just reviewed from these graphs. I want you to write down your problem statement. Pause the video if you need to take a few minutes. Now let's take a look at one possible way of phrasing those precision elements into a problem statement. Many 3rd and 4th graders are engaging in defiance between 11:45 and 12, near the end of their 30-minute recess period, with most of these instances occurring on the playground, in the class, or in the hall, because the students want to avoid the upcoming classroom instructional period. Is yours similar to that? Do you have your 5 elements? Now, another thing we might want to establish now is, what are our current levels? How frequently are these behaviors being recorded? One way that we can do this is by going back into our Swiss data set, and we can put a framework of just looking at data for 1 month time period. We know that over a 3-month time period, we saw 37 referrals, our precisely defined behaviors. We can go back now and we want to calculate a rate per day. So we need to know how many school days there were in each of these months, and then put in the number of referrals that we have for each of these days. We then can calculate a rate per day. This can now finish off our precise problem statement. We are now solution ready and goal ready. The next step is to add this to our TIPS meeting minutes form. In this example, we'll use this as a new problem. We would go down into the section where the precise problem statement is and enter our exact statement, including our current levels. Now review your own behavior data using whatever data set you have. Scan your data to see if you see any problems that exist. If you have one, focus just on one, and then use your data to be able to write a precise statement for one of the problems. Pause the video right now so you can look through that. Let's take a look at an example precise problem. Many students in 1st through 6th grade are displaying harassment in the classroom, playground, cafeteria, and on the afternoon bus. It's also happening in the morning and at lunch. They're doing this in order to gain adult or peer attention or to obtain some item. Now let's look at our current levels. We have it for the past 3 months. Let's move over to that section on our meeting minutes form. Now take a moment and write a goal for this precise problem. Don't forget to include the what and the when. Pause the video so you can take a moment to do this. Let's take a look at one way we could have written a goal. Referrals for harassment on the bus, in the classroom, or on the playground will be reduced to 2 or fewer per month by April. We also calculate the rate per day, and then to 1 or fewer per month by May. It will remain at that level for the rest of the school year. So this has a what and a when, and also a maintenance feature. At some point, we'll want to fade away the supports or strategies that we put in place, but we don't want that to result in a spike in those behaviors. Now we want to enter those onto the TIPS meeting minutes form. Now look at the problem that you defined from your own data. Write a goal for success. Don't forget to include the what and the by when. Pause the video while you complete this activity. Once we've identified our problem with precision and identified the goal for success, we now have the elements to be able to align with solutions to bring about this desired change. Some critical things to think about when we're looking at our solutions. We need to use the precision elements in our statement. For example, if someone presented with a fever, we just wouldn't want to go right away and give a solution. We might want to establish, do they also have a sore throat? Are they vomiting? Are they fainting? How long has this been going on for? Just a few hours? Or for the past month? These are all going to lead us to different solutions based on the precision elements. Look at these two precision elements. We have many fourth grade students are displaying defiant behavior in the cafeteria during lunch in order to gain peer attention. We have that same statement, however, the why is changed. They're doing this now in order to avoid peer interactions on the playground after lunch. With those elements in consideration, we might go two different directions for our solutions. Here's another example, changing another precision element. Now we have many kindergarten students that are having difficulty cleaning the art room at the end of their specials because they do not know the routines for using, returning, and cleaning those materials. We might already have some ideas of some solutions we put in place based on those precision elements, but they're appropriate for kindergarten students. However, if we change the who to now be sixth grade students, our solutions might not be as appropriate. We also have to consider if the solutions are feasible, given the resources that we have and the context in which we believe we want to implement the solution. We have to make sure that there's support among the staff who are going to be implementing these solutions. And then, would you expect to see a change in the behaviors given this solution being put in place? These are important things to consider as we think through solutions to put in place. We also want to look at the different domains. What kinds of different strategies can we put in place? Can we change something in the environment so that the probability of the behaviors occurring are decreased? What do we need to teach our students or adults to help bring about the desired behaviors? Can we prime the students for displaying those behaviors? And what can we do to help make sure that we're reinforcing what we want to see and not inadvertently reinforcing the behaviors we don't want to see? And then what kind of consequences do we need to make sure are in place? These domains help us think about our action plan of what we're going to do, who is going to implement it, and by when. Here's an example of some solutions that we may put in place for 6th and 7th graders who are engaging in inappropriate language, harassment, disrespect, and aggression in classrooms. Again, we don't have to have solutions in each of these domain areas. Let's take a look at another example. Now we have the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders using inappropriate language on their afternoon bus, and they believe that's occurring as a means of attaining peer attention on the loud bus. What solutions might you put in place for this problem, given your context and your school setting? Here's some that were considered. Everything from creating a new seating arrangement to make sure that students have the skills on how to gain peer attention when there are things such as a very loud bus, reminding students of the incentives, and then teaching other students to respond only to those appropriate ways of gaining attention. Now, your solutions may have looked very different. Again, we don't have to fill in every one of these domains, but it's important to consider them when we're brainstorming the appropriate solutions. Now we want to document our action plan by adding it to the TIPS meeting minutes form. Both the solution actions, who is going to be responsible for implementing the actions, and by when those solutions are going to be put in place. Now go back to your data. What solutions would you put in place? And again, as you develop your action plan, don't forget to include who is going to do it and by when. Pause the video while you complete this activity. We now need to develop an evaluation plan that has two aspects. The first one is looking at the fidelity of implementation. In other words, did we do what we said we were going to do? This will be documented on our meeting minutes form. Here's an example of some different ways that we can gather this data. We want to use quick and easy metrics. The first one can just be put up in the faculty lounge. Questions on a chart paper, on a whiteboard, asking questions about the solutions that you said you were going to put in place. Here's an example. One of the solutions was to give high five greetings to the students. as they enter class on time in the morning. Here we go. Here's one. This can go up there, and teachers or staff just put little marks, stickers, whatever you want to do, magnets moving along the board to answer whether or not they were able to implement this solution. Here's another one. How many days during the week did you review with students the procedures for passing in the hall? Again, similar thing. We can just respond along the continuum. The idea is to have the most easy and effective way to get these fidelity data. Again, not for accountability or a gotcha, but to know whether things were able to be infused into the environment. And if they were not, what barriers were there? What do we need to do to help people take on these solutions? This gets entered on our TIPS meeting minute form. Now, we also have to talk about what kind of data we want to gather to know whether we've reached our goal or not. And this again will be entered on to our TIPS meeting minute form. Here's an example. If we look at the fidelity of implementation, we see that they used a question that was posted in the staff lounge that was completed weekly. Their outcome data is going to be using Swiss Office Discipline referrals for harassment based on their precise problem statement. Now look at your precisely defined problem, your goal, and your solutions, and identify what fidelity and outcome data you would need to gather to be able to answer the question of whether solutions were implemented as you'd hoped, and then whether or not you solved the problem. Pause the video while you think through this activity. Our next step is to implement our solutions with high integrity. Once solutions have been implemented and an adequate amount of time has passed, we need to ask whether or not we have solved the problem. Here's an example. Let's take a look at this one. For this, look at the fidelity measures. We said that 3rd and 4th grade teachers were going to rate their implementation on a scale of 0 to 5 from low to high. And it was going to be posted each month on the faculty checkboard, which must be in the lounge. When we look at the big picture of these data, we find that we did implement with fidelity. We go back to our meeting minutes form and we can confidently check implemented with fidelity. The next thing we have to consider now is whether or not we impacted change. We're going to review our data. First of all, we have to get current data. We look at our month cycle, we pull up the number of referrals, we get the number of school days, so we can obtain the rate per day. That now gets entered into our form at the current rate level per school day. So now we're at 0.17 per day. We look over at our goal, and our goal had been to be at rate of 0.20 instances per school day. When we compare these two, we can mark that we have met the goal. Once we've used data to inform our decisions, we now have to ask, what do we do next? Do we need to modify our solutions? Do we need to further refine our problem statement? Do we need to talk about a maintenance plan? Or do we need to revise our goal? The important part here is that problem solving does not stop. We continue to use our data as we cycle through the problem solving model. We hope this has been a helpful walk through the TIPS problem solving process.